Greetings and welcome to the Cerebral Women Art Talks podcast. I'm Phyllis Hollis, your host. As an extension of my Instagram page, Cerebral Women, this podcast offers insights into the visual art world. I interview artists, mainly artists of color and female artists who will freely articulate what inspires their creativity. In addition, you'll hear interesting perspectives from dedicated art professionals who work with artists and the art institutions that feature them. I'm confident that collectively, these individuals will indeed stimulate your mind as they do our eyes. Please know these interviews are conducted in my Manhattan apartment, so please forgive the background sounds of city life. Welcome to the Cerebral Women Art Talks podcast. In this episode, I am pleased to feature Nigerian-American abstract painter Odili Odita. His work is colorful and engaging. It's art that you can live with and stare at all day, every day. Nothing is predictable. Odili produces large-scale work with colorful patterns, which are a reflection of his view of the world and of humanity. He offers a perspective of someone with both a Western and African influence. He has had several solo exhibitions in museums and institutions, extensively in the United States and internationally, and has been commissioned to paint many large-scale wall installations. Included on the website are links to Odili Odita's complete bio and his many accomplishments. He is currently represented by the Jack Shainman Gallery in New York City. Please enjoy this insightful interview. Thank you, Odili, for joining me today on my podcast. I really appreciate it. We're in a very interesting time. So I like those that I feature to share with the audience, with listeners, when they realize that they're innately an artist. So if you could share that with us.
Well, I grew up with artwork all around the house. In particular, was African art, traditional African art. My dad was an art historian and in the history of African art and archaeology, and he founded the History of African Art department at Ohio State University. So we had a lot of these artifacts around the house, and at the same time, he was a painter. He gave up painting basically, even though he painted a bit at the house. He gave it up and focused on art history to help raise the family. So I had, Picasso books, Miro books, things of that name, Matisse, things of this nature, and
that's great. That's wonderful.
Yeah. So I would just draw from. When I was a little older, I would draw from the things that he had, prints and drawings and images that he would have of artwork for his research. There were artists always coming to the house, African artists coming to the house quite a lot. And but I loved comic books, and I would draw from them primarily when I was younger, and then just try to continue to expand myself as I was getting older. I guess I was thinking of new projects and new things to follow up on as I was getting interested in different things. So
did you study art?
Yeah, I studied, basically art was my thing. I, in all through school, I was drawing all the time. And for me, drawing was like a way of coping and dealing with the kind of strangeness of being in that suburb I grew up in. I grew up in a suburb called Upper Arlington, in Columbus, Ohio. And it's a very good suburban neighborhood, but it was very white. And at the time in the 70s, it was I could count like always in my classes one of maybe three African American families, Black families in the school or in my grade at the time. And pretty much it would be, when I was in elementary and junior high, I was maybe I can't even really remember, maybe one other family.
Wow.
And so forth. But it was pretty stifling. I mean, I don't want to say that it was a bad time. I had a great education, and the school system is, looking back on it, when I got to New York, I always believed public schools were great, and why shouldn't anyone think of going to a public school, until I got to New York to see that, public schools are not necessarily well funded or well appreciated. And so I realized what a great education I had there. But it was hard to really fit in because not only being Black, but also being African. I was born in Nigeria. My brother and sisters all were born in the States, but I was born in Nigeria, and we left due to the Biafran War, the Nigerian Civil War. So, it was drawing was a way for me to really just gain one of many ways I used to gain entry and access into American culture. And so I was always drawing through, all the way through high school into college. I was really talented. I mean, I could always draw, so I was really talented. People always encouraging me to go on and go forth. And some would say, maybe think of something else because you're not going to make any money doing this and whatnot. Drawing is really, I don't, when I teach drawing to students and speak about it in classes, I'm always like, don't underestimate drawing because it's valuable in basically anything.
What were you drawing? Because your art is abstract. Were you drawing figurative?
Yeah, I started out figurative. I mean, even now when I'm dealing and thinking abstractly, I'm thinking through figuration in the sense of in a psychological and conceptual sense. I'm thinking through figuration. I don't think that figuration and abstraction are separated in any way at all, except for maybe an approach. But I think the best figuration becomes abstract, and the best abstraction can engage the body and the mind in the world. So there's figuration aspects of it, whether it's literal or conceptual, and switching back and forth between the two polarities.
Yeah, a friend of mine, I was at the Armory with her, and she made the comment that figurative painters, it's easier for them to convey the message that they want to in their art, whereas for the abstract painter, it's more challenging because your work has to really make the viewer think and follow a path that you intend, but it's not always so obvious.
Well, there's a way the figure is a ready-made. I mean, we can actually engage it really very quickly because we recognize it. We recognize those things. I mean, I think figuration can be as funny and as stupid as to say you see these medieval scenes or movies representing olden scenes in old Europe where you have a image of a pig's head over the door, and you're like, oh, that's where I get the meat. That's bread, and that's where I get the bread. It becomes a pictogram in a certain way, and that's in a way the easiest way to understand figuration. But figuration can be as plain as and as I guess I want to say maybe as dumb as bad abstraction. Bad abstraction can be very dumb too. I think there's a popularity. Figuration is much more popular among people because of its ready access and immediate access. But it's sort of like, I look at it like music. I mean, in a way, you have music and you have the words, and then you have the words that create pictures, and the pictures can help you define things. I'm looking at a lot of music videos right now because I'm doing this. I had to do this one kind of a list of things, and I'm seeing how the music videos can, when you're on YouTube and you look at different videos of the same song, you're seeing how in which the song's being interpreted. And so it's like, wow, you're seeing images reading and speaking the story of the music in these completely different ways. Mm-hmm. So, to see figuration and to look at it is not necessarily meaning that you're going to see something easily understood. You're still going to have to think through what the images you see and think about what you're looking at and make determinations. And that kind of thing is the way in which you can actually look through abstraction. It's not just going to be a blind language or something beyond you, but you're really going to have to open your senses in the way that we assume figuration, because in a lot of ways we've had practice with looking at images and practice with looking at things, and we just have to train ourselves maybe better to be able to read through abstraction to see that maybe a lot of the things we're looking at are not that good, and maybe these other things are actually really even better.
It's very interesting, and I am curious about one thing. And at what point in your career and at what age did you transition from figurative to abstraction? And why do you think that took place?
Well, I know, I can tell you exactly. It was a friend's work I was enamored with. His name, I believe, was Andrew Barron. Who we were students at Ohio State University. And I remember you learn by emulating things, you copy things. Essentially, that's how you learn. You learn about yourself and what you're doing through copying other things. And so I was making paintings that were like his because I was admiring the way in which he used paint and so forth. And he came up to me and said, one day he said, "Man, you're stealing my style, man. You gotta you gotta make your own thing." And I was like, yeah. And so from there on, I was really trying to do my own thing. And I realized it just was pushing me towards more abstract place rather than this literal place. And we were both engaged with comic books and trying to render our paintings in a way that they spoke with this kind of visual power of comic books. But I think I took it into a different way, which I'm pleased to think about when I think that, I went into this idea of the abstract light, the abstract energy of comics rather than the literal figure rendering through figuration.
Thank you for that. And another question regarding your art, your colors. What motivates the colors that you choose?
Well, I feel lucky that it was all coming from home. I mean, literally I was almost at certain points in my growing up in my parents' house, I was embarrassed by the volume of color, a bright volume of wallpaper all throughout and patterns everywhere. And this is because I was trying to just fit into America, but I had some crazy wallpaper in that house. And to this day, I'm like, where did you get this? We got to get another. This is incredible, classic. But my parents were really, my dad was a painter and my mom appreciated art. With what she was doing, she appreciated art. And so we're, refugees living in America, but not losing our sense of style, Nigerian style. So we had crazy mishmashes of furniture and upholstery and wallpaper and clothing and whatnot. And so I grew up in that kind of thing. And then, in Columbus, Ohio, thank goodness, we have neighborhoods where they don't paint the houses white and have either black or green shutters, like in the East Coast. In these neighborhoods in Columbus, you can have pink house next to a purple. In some of the more funky neighborhoods, you can have pink houses next to yellow house, next to purple house, next to aqua house, next to whatever. And that was what I was seeing. And in some of the more strict neighborhoods, of course, they have some reduction of that color, but generally you're seeing color everywhere. And then when I got to Bennington College as a grad student and I was up there, I was just shocked at how even in more rundown neighborhoods, the restriction of color choice on the houses is just like, oh my God, where'd all the fun go? But so
boring.
But yeah, definitely. It's also clothing is very important for me. I love fashion. I've always been interested in that because I guess my mother, my parents both were fashionistas in their own way. And, just with a sense of African Nigerian style they had, and then dressing as they did in the West. And then my mom, she would take me to a lot of garage sales. For her, shopping was a form of relaxation. So I would just be tagging along with her on Saturdays and Sundays, going to these garage sales and looking at all the stuff. And color was part of the things that informed me. So I feel like I have a bit of training over the years of that experience, just knowing, decades, knowing like the quality of the color, the quality of the print, the lighting of the magazine fashion shoot, like these kind of things that tell you how technology transforms, but how it also transmits color, this kind of cloth versus that kind of cloth, things of that nature. So yeah, that was my personal relationship to color. And then realizing later that through drawing and things I learned in certain class, like with a teacher of mine, Forrest West, he was an African-American painter, a professor of mine at Ohio State University, just the way in which he helped me to understand color and the way he was excited with the way I used color, and then the way I could get excited in the way I used color, and then to see it not only in the sense of the African American or African world, but in a way that crossed geographies where cultures use color in these distinct ways, in ways in which you realize that there's a certain attitude and approach with that as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, your work definitely lights up a room.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to do things where essentially I want the color to be as physical as possible. I mean, I know that this is my thing. For me, all the senses meet in the mind, and the mind is what sees, smells, tastes, touches everything. So it's like, for me, I want my use of color and the effect of color to be as physical as say something sculptural, as physical as something real, so that it's not just a sight, it's not just a sensation, but it becomes a physical experience as well.
I do have one question before we continue on about art, but are your siblings artists?
We're all kind of, no, they're not, but we're all kind of sensitive to it because of having grown up in that same experience, in the sense of all those things around you and the respect for art that was there. They all have a strong aesthetic sensibility. You know, my one sister went into design at Stanford. My other sister, who's a business person, just has a great sense of culture around her. My brother also, he took my dad's art history class when he was at Ohio State as well. I never took any class from my father because I just like, that's my dad. I'm not going to sit in the class with him. But definitely, all of us have a sensitivity to aesthetics, yeah, an appreciation for it, if at the very least.
Yeah, it's healthy for children to grow up with art.
Yeah, whatever they do, just it's a good thing. They just know that there's possibilities, that they have possibilities in their world.
Right, and it makes them think differently.
Yeah, yeah. It's like traveling. When a kid gets to travel a lot, it just opens up. It's a very positive thing. However you see it manifest in a kid, it's just really a positive thing.
So when you create work, do you think about who your audience is?
Yeah, to a certain extent, in the sense that, I want to talk about certain things through the work, and I want to address certain things. And I realize I have a subtle approach. I appreciate. When I was a kid, I loved punk rock, and as much as I love soul and R&B, some gospel stuff, certain country western things, and so forth. But I just like, yeah, I like older stuff, old bluegrass and things of that nature, honky tonk. But it's like, so I have an approach where I want to be able to, I want my work to be able to address certain things right now in culture where I feel it can approach the content and the subject matter in a way in which it's nuanced. And that's what I want to say, that it's nuanced. I know that I can engage color where it's like wham, 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 wham. But I'm more appreciative of nuance, where you can change pace, you can slow things down, you can bring things to speed, and then faster than speed itself, and then break down to silence again. For me, it's really more interesting in the long run to see something unfold than just to say a statement, kaboom, right out flat, and then it's done.
So you've painted murals.
Yes.
So that audience is walking down the street. What was your thought process in creating that type of work?
Well, the installations really are about the body and the mind coming together. Just like seeing art and being with art, you see it, let's say on a computer, you see it in a magazine, and that's one thing where you just see it in your mind and coming into your mind without that physical experience combined with it. When you're standing in front of art, when you're walking through it, as to say an installation, it turns on so many different things at once. And that's what is one of the really interesting aspects of the installation. There are a lot of different things I didn't realize with the installation through the process in the years of making them, but I'm still wanting to engage with this idea of the whole physiognomy of oneself, just everything in surround as one goes through a space. So noticing the work in as much as noticing the architecture, in as much as noticing one's own self as they walk through a space, and then finding a new way of understanding as you're walking through the space. So for instance, I might think of how the audience will walk through the space, what the space's function is, where the energy is moving and how it's moving through the space, and what directions it goes, and how it escapes or enters from rooms that are adjacent to the space. And then I like to even get a little bit of a backstory about this space within a space. Let's say the building, the room, or the building on a compound, in an area within the city, in time, and anything historic like that. And then with the paintings, I mean, my sense of audience, sometimes I'm thinking of, I'm thinking of Black people looking at the work, and I'm thinking of other painters looking at the work in history, and I'm thinking of other painters and other people through time looking at the work. So my audience is something that is very broad. It's not only here in the sense present tense. It's not here in a sense of geographic sense. It's also here through time and in time.
Fascinating, fascinating. I love you artists. Love you artists. So what are you working on now?
Right now, I just basically worked on paintings for my show up until the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. We were working up until March 20th, and then I basically closed my studio over the weekend with all the announcements of coming from, different sectors of the United States government, from the Fed to the states to the city, and then actually observing governors in other states, particularly the Governor Andrew Cuomo in New York, who seemed to be one of the most grounding voices for sanity, in as much as clarity and preparedness and a lot of the things that were happening. I'm still working on stuff for projected proposals for installations. That's kind of, as days go by, is coming more up in the air, because we thought that this would be maybe a month, then 2 month stay at home. And now we're looking at potential a second wave and an extension of time of stay at home, going maybe all the way to January. We're really not sure what's going to happen with schools and whatnot. So it's a bit chaotic right now. But what we're all finding, even in the classes I'm teaching online as we continue to the end of the semester, is that, it's waves of uncertainty, but there's a kind of balancing that's happening, in a sense of people readjusting their perspectives, what they are, how they're seeing the things that they've done before, and how they want to continue after this is over, because this will be over, but I think the world will be drastically changed. And it is changing now, in the sense that as I look out in the sky from where I'm living, I feel I'm looking at a different sky. Maybe because I'm hearing news about 25% less world pollution, pictures where you can see through murky water where you couldn't have seen through it before, like in Venice. People in cities in China where they're saying that they're for the first time seeing what the sky looks like. Seismologists who are speaking of being able to hear the sounds of the earth again. It's something, when you think about how this pandemic has forced people to stay in and not fly and not drive and things of this nature, and that the world has gotten clean by 25% or more. The world, where, if we asked people to do this, it would never happen. Never, ever happen. And now we have at least a situation, and I'm thinking, what if it were possible to maybe change society where, maybe say we'll shut down for 2 months, and maybe it would be interesting to say, what can we do if we can invent a situation where cash is not currency, and that there would be a different kind of currency that would hold us through the 2 months, like we're experiencing now. We know and understand that economy works because people spend money. And if people don't spend money, you don't have a functioning economy. When Bush said after the 9/11 tax, he said, "Go out and shop." And I was like, as a kid, like, what? What kind of statement is that? Go out and shop. He was talking absolute sense. He was saying our economy is built on spending money. So now we're in this very terrible situation People are risking their lives trying to go back to work at this time when everybody, doctors, scientists are saying this is the worst thing to do. But they're in dire situation. These people are starving. So what can be done if government, which is their function, is to help people work and live as groups? Maybe they might be able to invent or be able to think of a way in which we can survive without the trade of currency. That's just, I'm not an economist, but that's what I'm thinking about right now.
It would be nice if we can always see the fish in Venice.
Yeah.
1 or 2 months a year. I think
that water is tragically dangerous. When I was there, if that water even splashed on me, I'd be in the bathroom with all sorts of alcohol and sanitizer.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I just hope that people start to appreciate the simple things in life, and that's extended, that it's not a temporary phenomena.
Yeah.
That, I still, it blows my mind how, women's designer shoes, just see the prices creeping up 100 every year. And you just ask yourself, where does it stop? And I think this will impact simple things like that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's kind of an interesting thing for me. I mean, it's like, you think, if you're talking about shoes in that way, in the way that I might think of them also as art, in the way that they're, these objects are so well made and can be so beautiful, and you do see the prices of these things go up and up and up. People might complain everything is so expensive, but the world has gotten so expensive in the way in which we're reliant on this system of trade, of buying and selling, and labor, and the measuring of how labor is measured and how time is measured, and the fact that there's a kind of gluttony that feeds itself that makes this whole system just become more increasing, but in a certain way also unsustainable.
Right.
I mean, how much can somebody pay for rent?
Right.
I mean, when is it going to be, how much does somebody have to make to pay for rent? And then if you have this small number that owns so much percentage of the world, how then is it possible to pay for rent if it keeps increasing as it does? And I'm things like this, I think of things like this at times, and it's just like, wow, I don't know how we're going to be able to keep this kind of thing going. So we have coronavirus, we have locusts, we have tornadoes and hurricanes, and maybe all the premonitions of doom are actually literally happening. But I think that this pace we have now, where we can just look at the earth and hear it again, maybe we have to think more clearly about how we're going to have to really save this planet in a true way, not just with words, empty words.
Mm-hmm. This has been a great conversation. I'm going to ask you one more question.
Yes.
And that is, how do you hope your work does impact or change the world?
Wow. For me, it's all about a certain kind of awareness of the human condition. I know that the way I speak through my work is a kind of I speak like a slow opening flower, or like peeling, in the way of peeling an onion, in the sense that I want the story that I'm speaking of to unfold carefully over time, and to unveil this notion of richness, intellectualism, positivity, and the possibility of transformation and growth in life. So for me, it's really about wanting to be able to say to somebody, we're not limited by the name we're called. We're not limited by how we're seen by others. We're not limited by how we're seen by ourselves. But the fact of the matter is we have the possibilities of doing anything, and anything that can be able to do this, to make tomorrow exist, and possibly after that to make tomorrow better. Your
work, your paintings, the colors, they are very, very uplifting. So it's obviously the reflection of your personality and how you view the world.
It's about life. It's about dancing in life. It's about living in life and experiencing life. I was listening to an older gentleman on the radio, and he was talking about from the South, and he was talking about just thanking. He was just saying, "Thank God I can live another day." He was talking about his factory work, and he was happy to get $500 a week from the factory work if he was sick, because the boss that he said was a good boss was allowing the people to continue to get money if they were sick, if they could keep working, and that he would get $500 a day. Sorry, $500 a week if he was out sick. And he said that's a blessing. I couldn't ask for anything more. And I was like, well, you could, I think. But he said, I couldn't ask for anything more. And he just said at the end, and I feel blessed and thank God I have another day, that I can experience another day. And that kind of humility is really powerful and important to me, because it shows a certain kind of gratitude for being able to have experience. And that to me is what is the greatest thing that an artist can access, is experience, and being able to communicate that experience and the possibility for greater experience.
It's wonderful. It's important to appreciate the simple things in life.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Odili. I appreciate your time and sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Phyllis. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Cerebral Women Art Talks podcast. For additional content, please visit cerebralwomen.com and be sure to follow Cerebral Women on Instagram.